Hi, everybody. Welcome to our X Fault. And this is Tia. I'm very excited to have her in here as a guest. She has a very popular podcast called Lifestyles with Tia. Also, you can reach her on her website, tiaspage.com. Is that correct? tiaspage.com?
Yes.
And Tia is going to share with us some personal experiences that she has had with the unexplained. I haven't talked to her beforehand about these experiences, so I'll be in for a complete surprise too. Her podcast is very popular and she has a lot of followers, but she is interviewing other people on her shows, I think. So she hasn't had a chance to talk about her personal experiences. So here's the shoe's kind of on the other foot a little bit, and I'll get to ask her some questions. Hi, Tia.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Did I get that right about your podcast? Is that anything else you want to add about the show or how people can get in touch with you?
No, I guess if they want to see what I do on a daily basis, just, outside of my career, they could visit me also on Instagram. It's TS Page. That's my Instagram name.
I've listened to a couple of her shows, and Tia, her show is Christian themed, but the show, I mean, she does some really hard-hitting interviews with some people that are going into some controversial topics. So definitely check it out. There's some really interesting interviews on there. And I think don't you have something coming up with Hulu too, or is that no longer in the works? Or
It's on a local satellite TV channel.
yeah.
I believe it's 24.7. I think it's a San Bernardino channel.
Yeah.
It's random times, but I think majority of the times it would be on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m.
Mm.
And that's just what it is that it's Lifestyles with Tia podcast just coming live onto television.
Oh wow.
That's what it is.
Now you're in California, right? Where roughly are you in California?
Yes, I am near Burbank, California.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, I'm really glad you joined us. Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to this. So I guess the first, we'll just go right into it. What is the strangest thing that you've experienced?
Wow, that's a good question. There's a lot of strange things that I've experienced throughout my life. One of them being even happening recently, still till today. I would say the easiest way to describe that would be maybe for the audience to be familiar with would be called sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
But in my experience, it's not sleep paralysis. For me, it's a spiritual thing because I notice that every time I go into that, it's so hard to explain. I'm gonna try my best to explain it, but every time I know that's gonna happen to me or it's gonna come about, I notice the drastic change in temperature, and it just gets really freezing cold.
So this happens
Around
before you go to sleep. You feel that change?
sometimes, not all the time, but majority of the times, even as when it's happening, my body temperature is extremely cold, and the surrounding of the room and the area that I'm in, it just drops tremendously.
How
That's
old were
one thing
you?
I've noticed.
How old were you when this first happened to you, that you recall?
I know I've seen something really strange, something spiritual when I was about like 5, 6 years old. That's when I actually saw it with my own eyes. But this thing that happens when I'm sleeping or half awake, sometimes I'm fully awake. When this comes to visit me, whatever this thing is, I can only say it's the evil spirit. And I'll explain that in a bit why I call it the evil spirit. But when this thing does come and visit me, normally, normally it happens on the days. I don't know. So for some people, I read up a lot about it because I wanted to know what it was as well when it was happening to me. But people, lot of the times I read the articles about people that have similar things happen to them. They would say that it usually happens when they're tired, things of that nature. But for me, it's not. It's even on days that I've had full rest, like 10 hours of sleep. So I know that it's not the same thing that they're experiencing with me. But the first time I remember happening to me, I was pretty young. I don't know exactly what age I was, but I'm sure I was about maybe in my teen years, or right before I reached my teenage years. But I do recall seeing something strange at age 5 or 6.
And
Yeah.
so, some of these experiences that we have, that whether they're dream experiences or an encounter with something unusual, I think they often go through the prism of whatever cultural background that we have. Do you think that something in your background would have influenced the way you perceived it, or was,
My background, meaning you mean like my family background
well,
or my culture?
religion, culture, whatever might have influenced you the most, in the area where you grew up, or the beliefs that you had around you at that time.
Hmm.
Uh,
I'm sure it had something to do with it. I remember when I saw something strange, that evil spirit that I first mentioned to you about when I was about 5 or 6 years old. Um, my family was a Buddhist during that time. My mom's side, at least, my father's side was Catholic, but they were Buddhists, and they were like hardcore Buddhists, where they pray early in the morning till night, and they had the shrine. We had a temple actually. Yeah, so, but me, I can't say I was a Buddhist. I never really practiced it. I am familiar seeing what it was like to be brought up in that atmosphere, but personally, I never practiced or prayed to Buddha. Um, but the strange thing that I did see was in a Buddhist temple in Taiwan. Yeah, I
and
was
this was,
playing
and
hide and go seek. Mhm.
so that was actually part of a waking experience. That was not a sleep paralysis thing. Okay.
Yeah,
Let,
that was for real happening, like
let,
before my
let's let,
eyes.
let's come back to that, because
Mhm.
there's so much more to kind of get through with the sleep paralysis, I think. So these are
Yes.
basically unpleasant experiences when you go through them, right?
Yes. What should we call this? Because I don't know if I should call it the sleep paralysis or not. Because for me, I don't think it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
Um,
I know from what I didn't know we were going to be discussing this, so I didn't research it. But from what I do know about it,
yeah.
I do know a little about it. Was, I think, in medieval times in Europe, they called it the Old Hag Syndrome, right? Because people would have this impression of waking up with an old hag sitting on their chest and they can't move.
Mm,
So it's called the Old Hag Syndrome. And I think there are some other people in more modern times that have referred to a hat man, or someone, some kind of a figure in the room that wears a
mhm,
hat, and you wake up and he's in the room, and it's like a wide brimmed hat or something like that, and you can't move. So, but so what would you want to call it? I mean, I don't know what. So I'm curious. So did you tell your parents when it first happened as a kid? And if so, did they give you any kind of a possible explanation? Was there a Buddhist explanation for it, or a Catholic explanation for it?
no, I don't think I told my parents when I was young. I remember telling a friend about it, and that friend like freaked out. Yeah. I told my parents later on in the years. Um, of course, that's when they became a Christian. So their explanation was, it's the evil spirit.
Now,
That
why
was the
would you
evil
think an evil
spirit.
spirit is visiting you? Do you think? I mean, because that's obviously the interpretation you're going with, but um,
Well, for me now, because I'm a Christian now, anything that's outside of, you know, um, holiness
mhm.
would have to be like anything absence of good would be evil for me. So and although I can't explain like how, so the only thing I can share is what I feel and how we felt during that time. It's definitely a chilly, like eerie feeling where it gives you like chicken skin and all of that stuff.
Do you,
So maybe we can call it the cape man, because for me it wasn't a big hat. The figuring that I saw, the shadow or the um, big black thing,
Mhm.
it was always wearing some kind of cape,
Huh,
like a long,
that is pretty similar to the Hat
yeah.
Man, though, and it's a male figure. These.
I can't see the face, so I don't
Mhm.
know if it's a male or a female, but I thought it was a male from the presence, the hard presence that I did feel, the strong, very big, strong. Yeah, I don't know how else to explain.
And
Um,
so now, so you think it's obviously the same spirit? It's not a variety of spirits. It's basically the same spirit that revisits you from time to time.
there were times I did see two of them,
Oh, hmm. And
and
they
they
were
were
both
actually having a conversation amongst themselves. They were
really.
having a conversation.
Have you ever heard of shadow people? Have you ever researched
Mm-mm.
that at all?
No, what is that about?
Well, I used to listen to late night radio when I got home from work back in the 90s, a show called Coast to Coast AM. And occasionally they would talk about, they would have the whole episode would be dedicated to these so-called shadow people. They're, people that you can look up stories of it online. They're people claim to have seen similar to that. They're people that they, they're clearly in the shape of a person, but all you can see is the darkness of shadow, as though it was kind of like a figure that was just cut out from the light. Um,
Mhm.
I don't think people could have different theories about what it is. I mean, I think some people theorize that it would be someone from another dimension where there was a little bit of bleed through. Our dimension was right next to a different dimension, and there was a little bit of crossover there. But I don't think that that's what you're thinking here. And a lot of those other stories too involved most of them involve menacing figures. I don't think any of these shadow people came in bringing gifts or words of kindness or anything. So they all
Mm.
tended to be like you interpreted as an evil spirit or something up to no good. Um, so yeah, but what they there's no evidence of them. It's all just from people's encounters.
Mm.
Um,
Did any
so
of them have a pleasant feeling towards that?
I didn't hear of anything like that.
Right.
But not surprisingly, a shadow, if you woke up in your room and anybody was in your room and it looked like a shadow, but it was clearly like a person,
Yeah.
it's unpleasant. Even if it turned out to be
Yes.
Casper the Friendly Ghost,
Yeah.
until you know otherwise, your mind is going to be like, that's very, this is scary. This shouldn't be
Mhm.
someone in my room. That's your safe place, your bedroom, right? So it's supposed to be. And so for someone to violate, and that's when you're most vulnerable, when you're sleeping. So for some figure, see, that's the thing too, is these shadow people, well, it seems to me, or similar to like your story, they come when you're asleep. So that's when you're now, people could say that's a dream or some kind of in between, or they could say they're coming when you're most vulnerable because you're not defending yourself because you're lying there asleep.
Mm.
um, do you have a reason to think that they would target you? um,
Maybe try to scare me or something. It doesn't scare me anymore. It's
yeah.
happened so many times that it doesn't really do much to me anymore. And
Mhm.
also, I know that God's power is way more stronger than theirs, and theirs is just child's play, like, you
Mhm.
know. So yeah, it doesn't scare me. But when it first happened, first few times, yes, I was like, what is this?
Yeah, yeah. Do you,
And
as a
couple of
Catholic?
times I was fully, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Couple of times I was fully awake too. So, I mean, most of the times I was fully awake. It was like I was sleeping and then it happened and then I woke up and I stayed awake throughout the experience.
Yeah.
But if somebody were to see me, it would probably look like I'm still sleeping because I can't move and I'm
Yeah.
just stuck in that position.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, the temperature gets really cold and I want to like maybe that one time I didn't have the blanket on me or something and I want to reach for the blanket to put it
Yeah.
on myself, but I couldn't. So now rather than saying I'm scared, it's more like frustrating because you're stuck and
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
move to do anything. Yeah.
I had I only had that experience once. I'm not going to say it's the same as yours, but it may sound at least a little similar. So this was, I think, about 10 years ago, and it was a holiday, and I was at my parents' house, and I was taking a nap. So it was not bedtime. It was like maybe it might have been Thanksgiving, and I was taking a nap, and I was taking a nap in my mother's bed, and so other people were still in the house, and I woke up. I because when I take a nap on days like that, your nap that lasts about 45 minutes, and then you just wake up. So I was in that stage of waking up when I was aware of some kind of, I don't know what to call it, but some kind of malicious figure
Mm.
floating over the foot of my bed towards, floating, hovering over the bed and coming towards me with a very kind of, and I'm not a religious person, but a very kind of, you could sense the evil emanating from it, or the ill wishes. And
Mhm.
I yelled at it enough that people in the house heard me, because I did
Uh-huh.
yell out loud.
What'd
And
you say?
I go get out of
You
here or
remember?
something
Yeah.
like that,
Uh-huh.
and then it still was there. And I actually grabbed the pillow and threw it
Mhm.
at it.
Oh,
And
you could move your hand on
yes, I
your
was not
arms.
paralyzed. And I was
Oh.
also, I could yell. I was not paralyzed at all. And I threw my pillow and it went right through it and disappeared. And then I got up kind of shaking, like, I'm not like to go out and tell people, like, do I go out and tell people this? Because
Yeah.
I'm like the science person, even though based on this channel here, I've never seen anything, I haven't really seen anything unusual that would make me convinced that there's anything supernatural in the world. I like a good
Hmm.
story,
Yeah.
from my own personal experiences. I don't really have much. And some unexplained things that I'm going to go through on some of my other channels, but on some of my other shows. But yeah, so that's my only one. But I don't know if that sounds similar to any of your experiences, but
It does
uh,
sound very similar, except that I, I'm not sure if mine was floating.
yeah,
I think it was walking. It wasn't floating, but I think it was walking. It was about 7 feet tall. It was really
seven
tall.
feet tall. Wow.
Yeah, it was gigantic to me. I'm only 5'2", so for me it was like. But then the similar thing to you, what you just explained, is that it did come by my feet area, the
Yeah.
tip of the bed area. Then it kind of got on top of the tip of my bed. So then I'm beginning to think maybe that's when it was floating. It
And if
probably
it was seven
flew.
feet tall and it was on your bed, it would have to be kind of crouched down, right?
Yeah, it was like this, like hovering over me, like what you said.
Yeah.
At some point, it was doing that and looking down at me, like kind of crouching down.
So
It was scary. Yeah.
it is
Mhm.
really odd, because I do believe that, we get into that in between dream state when you're just waking up. Uh, and sometimes your mind is almost still, part of it is still dreaming, right? But why is it that we're all having this similar experiences
Similar.
of
Exactly.
something
That's
at
my
the,
question too.
yeah, something at the foot of the bed? Because I had never had that experience before, and it wasn't, I don't think anybody ever told me about them having an experience like that. So I don't know where my mind could have even developed an idea like that. I'd never seen any movies on that or anything. So yeah, why was it that we're all having this thing at the foot of the bed that is, clearly has kind of evil intents? I can tell you though, they are vulnerable to pillows.
And the people that I spoke with that did talk about similar situation as this, and handful of people called it the sleep paralysis, and another handful of people called it the evil spirit.
Yeah.
But whatever they want to call it, it sure is a similar experience. Now, the reason why I don't think it's exactly a sleep paralysis, because when I read up on that, um, it just says it's when your body goes into this transition of deep state, and
Mhm.
you start to hallucinate. That's their
Mhm.
whole explanation of sleep paralysis, is the hallucination part. But
Mhm.
if we're all hallucinating, why are we all hallucinating the similar figure,
Right. Right.
similar presence?
Right.
And they all kind of look alike with the hat or the cape,
Yeah.
and they all come by the foot of the feet. Mine's, yeah, I don't recall anything coming above my head, but I always recall that coming near the feet. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah.
But when it did get on top of the foot of the bed, I think it was trying to come down into my body. I felt like, I remember thinking to myself, if it gets inside my body, then I'm in trouble. I remember
So,
thinking that as a young kid. Mhm.
oh, but you no longer think that? You think you're safe from that now, or?
No, because that time is the only time that thing was trying to get
Yeah.
inside, inside to my body.
So as
Other
a Christian, you
experiences?
probably still think about, do you believe in possession?
Oh yeah, I do. I do believe that thing exists, because I've experienced that as well. Not to myself, but I've seen something like that happen to
Mhm.
others. Um,
So you
but
feel you're protected though because of your beliefs, or some, by God, but because of your faith.
I do believe I'm completely protected,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean they don't want to mess with you. I do believe that they like to mess with you, and
Yeah.
mess with you even more so when you're getting closer to the Lord. That's what I feel.
Yeah. That's very rational. I mean, it would seem that if there are evil creatures, spirits, that kind of thing would tend to rub them the wrong way. um,
Yeah, but and another explanation as to why I know for a fact it was the evil spirit is because one time when that was happening to me, it actually whispered in my ear. It said, "Where is your God now?" It asked me, "Where's your God now?" Like, kind of
yeah.
mocking the Lord, mocking my belief in Christ. Like, I don't know, like, do you remember that story when Jesus was getting crucified, or when the devil took Jesus up to the top of the temple and showed him the world and said, "You can have all this if you bow before me," kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Like, or if you you were to jump down here, like, would your God come, would your angels come and save you? it, it kind of like was something like that. It was testing me to see where my faith was, or
Right.
like,
Or even if
where's your
you're,
God?
even
Yeah.
even if your faith broke because of fear, not because of temptation, like in the with the Bible situation, but because of fear, then maybe you'd be more vulnerable. But as long as you reacted with the confidence that God can protect me, and then maybe that's a way of banishing it. But it hopes to get you in that vulnerable moment where you have enough fear where you say, oh my God, this is this is so powerful, I can't be protected from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that would also be a way to, maybe for it to try to challenge your faith, where if you started to believe that God wasn't protecting you, then maybe that would be a way of, if the goal of these beings is to make people doubt God, then that would be a way of doing it, I guess. So,
Yeah.
all right. So what happened in the Buddhist temple?
So I was playing hide and go seek, um, and I think it was my turn to hide, and I it was just in a boony field where we were a little bit off the city, and it was just a big field of just there were some flowers, but I do recall it being more brown colored. So it must have been like I almost want to speak my language right now. Like English is not coming out right for me right now. It's just a very big open field with a big Buddhist temple in the middle of the field. And there were some trees, of course, and some little areas you could hide. But I was thinking, I'm gonna go to the temple and see where I could hide in there if it's even open.
Yeah.
So my friend's counting, I don't know, was it like 20 through one, backwards or whatever. I was going around trying to find a place to hide, and then I saw that this little crack in the doorway. It looked like the temple was open. So I was going in there, being curious at the same time, like, what is this about? And just kind of looking around. And when I saw up on the ceiling, there were just very colorful, bright colors, colorful paintings of, I don't know what to call that, ancestors or just masters or whomever they thought were gods. Maybe those are gods to them. I'm not too familiar what those paintings are, but it was just very colorful and big. I remember everything being so big and gigantic. And there was a statue, a Buddha statue in the middle. It was like a gold statue and it was humongous. And I felt a little scared.
So had you ever been in that Buddhist temple before? Or that was
no,
not
that
even
was
like
the
with your
first
parents?
time.
Okay. So
No, I've been to my parents' Buddhist and my mom's temple that she goes to, or other temples, I've seen other temples before, but this was a new place.
And how old were you?
I must have been like 6.
Yeah.
5 or 6.
So I could see would that be a really intimidating thing to go in and you're only 6 and you've got this, you're surrounded by these unusual sights, including this giant gold statue. I mean, I would see that. I could see that would be a very powerful moment.
Yes. Like, I wouldn't say unusual because I've seen it before, but for some reason that day, that was scary to me. Yeah. Maybe the other times, I don't know why other times wasn't as scary. Maybe because I was with my family, or maybe because I didn't really pay close attention to it. But this is like, I'm trying to find a place to hide. And then my friend's voice is getting dimmer and dimmer. And now I'm just completely alone in this big temple with this gigantic, statue. I still have a fear of that. I don't know what it's called. There's people that are scared of big figurines or statues, and I still have that. Like recently my boyfriend had to take me to this place. Was it called? It was near the Salvation Mountain. Maybe it was called the Christ Valley or something, where there were just like huge statues of the disciples and Christ. I mean, it was of a Christian theme, but it still scared me.
Yeah.
Anything big, like, and imagine going there at night and seeing big things that are more bigger than you. I don't know. For some people, it doesn't scare them. And when I mentioned that, I've had a couple friends tell me that's strange, but for me, it gets really scary. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too. Now, I'm not a psychologist and I don't really have any training in that other than just, reading online and stuff. But I think they would have a field day with that whole experience, because here you are as a girl and you're playing in a very natural setting, as you described, with flowers and bushes and trees and or fields. And then all of a sudden you're there's a door that's opened almost magically, right? And then almost like a rite of passage, you go through the door, and even though you're terrified of what you see, you keep walking further into it, almost like in a dream state, right? And then you see this magical world inside that they've created, with giant and terrifying figures. I don't know. I think like a Jungian, I can't say that.
Yin Yang?
No, Carl Jung, this the eminent psychologist who invented stuff like synchronicity and the collective unconscious, and he came up with all those ideas, archetypes. Very interesting. But he would have people trained in that would be able to talk about that whole experience of going in there as kind of a rite of passage, or hero's journey kind of thing, where you go through this secret door, and then I think they would say maybe that was part of growing up too, that after that, a whole new level of reality was opened up to you, and whole new parts of yourself. Did you see anything supernatural in there, or anything spooky, or just the whole experience was?
Yeah. So right after I started to feel this, little bit of strange, there was a strange cold breeze around where I was standing, kind of like what I explained to you before, where the temperature drops. All of a sudden, I felt really cold. And I'm like, I'm running around, like I'm sweating. It shouldn't be this cold, right? But when I saw the figuring, the statue and the paintings, yeah, I was like, I guess it could have gone both ways. Some people could have looked at it like, wow, this is art, because it could look beautiful in somebody's eyes. For me, it was kind of spooky. And then I saw the same black figure with the cape on. It just went shh.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know
Yeah,
he
it
was going
just,
to make an appearance. Wow.
and then, okay, let's call it a he, right? So then after all, if I think about it, it's not just a Western thing. This was happening in Asia. Because to me, the cape man is like the cape man. I don't know, the slender man, the American folktale kind of devil or evil satanic spirit. But yeah, I guess it makes sense. Spirits don't have a place or time. They could travel, So maybe it came to Asia. I don't know. Or maybe they live in Asia too, or there's a bunch of them there too. I know this all sounds so like retarded right now because I don't know how to put it into words exactly, but I did see that same figure or that shadow pass by like really quick. It was like a split second, but I know what I saw. And then I ran outside to actually track it down, and it turned its corner to the temple. So now I'm following that thing because now I completely am lost in this little mode. I'm forgetting about my friend looking for me and playing hide and go seek. I'm now tracking down this, whatever this thing is. I saw it cut corners a couple times and then it just diminished, vanished.
Well, there's a lot of interesting things about that. Now, it seems like this evil spirit, or whatever, maybe it's not evil, whatever it is, opened the door and wanted you to come in. It doesn't, because there was no one else in there, and once you were inside, it showed itself to you. And then it's also interesting that you want to, even though you find this a terrifying figure, even at that early age, you wanted to follow it. So
I was always a curious monkey.
Yeah, but some part of you is attracted to it. I mean, maybe, attraction might be too strong a word, but there's something that you went after it. And not in anger, you weren't hunting it.
Yeah, definitely wanted to know, what is that? You know? Now, did I get a pleasant or a happy feeling about it? No, absolutely not. It was very eerie, very spooky. It was a very, like, even at that age, I knew it was something evil. I knew it was something not of good. I knew that.
It's funny too. Another thing that this Carl Jung talked about very famously was what he described as the shadow. This is not to be confused with what I was talking about earlier with shadow people. What he was talking about was that he was a psychologist. So in examining the psyche of people, he was the one that coined terms such as, some of it was Freud, but he was a disciple of Freud initially until he broke away. But they talk about things like the ego and things like that. Well, one of the aspects of your person that he talks about is called the shadow. And I believe the shadow is like a part of you that is stays repressed. It's that, but it's there and it's an essential part of you. So it's that desire to do things that you shouldn't do, maybe that are bad, or things that are at least not good for you. And your ego, your knows enough to keep it in the background and to not let it out. But it percolates through the subconscious sometimes and gets you to do things. It kind of tricks you into doing things. I'm not saying that that was, but it's just interesting that you have this figure that is kind of like a shadow, and he gets you to trespass onto the temple because of your curiosity to see what was inside it. And those would be aspects of the shadow, because how the curiosity could kill the cat, or the curiosity to go someplace where you maybe shouldn't go, not because you're intending to do bad, but you shouldn't, but you're so curious you can't help it. I don't know. It's just, that's a really interesting experience.
Yeah, I really wish I got to see the end the end was that it disappeared. So I don't know where it had disappeared to, and I don't know what the purpose of that was, but that was my first encounter with something so strange.
It definitely
And
wanted you to see inside that temple.
yeah.
You know what? You
And
could interpret that from a Christian point of view too, though. If this spirit understood that you were destined to be drawn to Christianity later in life, maybe it was trying to show you something different, to try to take your eye off the ball. I don't know.
maybe I don't know. I just think it ultimately I know that there's heaven and hell, there's good and evil. So the only thing I can say is it was an evil spirit. Now, why did I see it? I don't know. And what was the purpose? I don't know. But I guess now it's just about talking about something that's so abnormal that happened, and that was abnormal at the time. If I look at it now, I don't think it's so abnormal, because if there is a good spirit, there's an evil spirit. So something like that could
Right.
be happening to people. And like I said, that one time when it whispered in my ear, like, "Where's your God now?" That was a very interesting evening, because I was in high school, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. His name is Tom, and I think he was an atheist during that time. I was trying to not convert him to becoming a Christian, but I was trying to share with him what I was learning in Sunday school, and why Christians believe that there is a God, and why Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And I was just sharing with him what I learned. But I don't know, maybe he thought I was trying to like pressure him into becoming a Christian, but I do recall just answering his questions as we went along the conversation. But at some point, I think he got um, really like, I don't know what the word is. I don't know if he got ticked off or not, but it was almost like he started mocking God, and was getting kind of little bit off the topic and challenging me. It was more like a fight than like a debate, and that wasn't my intention. My intention was to just answer his questions, and to tell and share with him what I believed in. And I think a lot of atheists could take it that way, and I do understand that now, because um, again, I don't know if it's the rebellious side of people, or they truly just want to test you to see where's your faith and how do you know that your God is the God. So it was just kind of like, okay. And then after we had that conversation, because I wasn't like a strong Christian or anything then, I was just trying to learn about God too. I started going to church because of my friend who was my neighbor. I love music, I'm a singer, and I've always loved music. And as you know, like in Buddhist temples, they don't have music or worship team or praise team. They do chanting and stuff like that. I was attracted to Christian, choir, all that atmosphere of praising God. And yeah, when I saw that, when I first went to Sunday school and I saw that, I was like, everybody looks so loving, and wasn't really paying attention to the message, but just the atmosphere itself. I was like, wow, I like this place. That's how I started going to church. So it wasn't really because I knew who God was or I had a keen interest about who God was. It was more like I liked the atmosphere. So I started going, which was a good thing because it led me to becoming more curious about God and of all that, Christian things. But so I felt like he was kind of attacking me or challenging me or like trying to have some kind of fight with me. Like I felt like
Yeah.
that. So then I went to sleep thinking to myself, there was a little bit of doubt in me. Like, what if at the end of this life, um, when everyone die or when I die, what end of my life, what if I find out that the God that I serve is not really the God?
Mhm.
And then I fell asleep. It was like a doubt that kind of went in my head or in my mind, and then I slept, having that little doubt. I don't know if that's why this thing was happening to me, but definitely, no matter how I look at it, it was of the evil. It wasn't anything good about it. Yeah.
It says on your website, you talk about leaving your castle and to set out to find what you can find. You traverse the land, meet all the wrong people, but eventually learn all the right lessons. I'm not sure if that was about you or about I think you have a children's book out too.
Yeah.
Um, so, but I think, but the name of the book is the journey of Princess Tia, right? So I think at least in part you'd be referring to your own life, right?
Yes.
So did you, so obviously you yearn for adventure, which makes sense. The same girl that went into the temple as a kid when the
Yeah.
door was open, and the same girl that chased the spirit back out of the temple. Um, so, but what are these, you encountered the wrong people. So
Mm.
what happened with there? Did that have any relevance for this experience or?
No, actually, it's not related. That is a complete different topic. But that book was written during the one of my most trialsome time of my life, when I really hit rock bottom in my life. I was working at an elementary school as a special needs coach, and during that time, I just wanted to leave some kind of legacy for the next generation of kids. So
Yeah.
I was trying to share in a children's book format of my life. And it's kind of hard to do that, but I feel like God was leading me to write it so that um, children can have a little bit of light in their life, which is
Mhm.
ultimately God. Because in that elementary school I was working at, um, you're not allowed to talk about religion or God or any sort of, religious topics. And
Mhm.
that book was like influenced by my past, like when I wasn't a Christian to when I became a Christian. And also when I hit rock bottom, all the friends that I had was nowhere to be found pretty much. It was like at your hardest times, you find out who your true friends are and who
Mhm.
really cares about you, who really love you, type of thing. So it was like a figuring out my life, and the most hardest time of my life is when I found God. So I
Mhm.
had to put that into a children's book so they can understand that even if because everyone hits rock bottom some point in their life. And if anyone listening out there that hasn't, then I don't know what to call that. I don't know if to call that a blessing or not a blessing. But for me, hitting rock bottom ended up being a blessing in my life.
A lot of times when you look at a movie or if you write a screenplay, I'm a writer, or a novel, the main character will have a kind of tragic flaw or some kind of flaw that they have to resolve. And it's that flaw that leads them to hit rock bottom. And then once they overcome that flaw, then that's when they finally succeed. did you have a flaw like that? Because I'm wondering, like, if I had to find a flaw, not a flaw, this is a bad thing. This is something that's admirable, but the curiosity that you have, I could see where that could get you into trouble too, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Curiosity always got me in trouble, yes, but also I learned every time I got into that trouble. Now, it's unfortunate if you're making the same mistake and you're not learning,
yeah,
but if
yeah.
it's like once and then you've learned something great out of that, then I think it's wonderful, right? Um, but literally, the book was exactly how it had happened in my life. Yes, I was like a princess growing up because, you know, my family was rich and I had everything I wanted as a kid, as a child, you know, more than normal, you know, type of family setting. I had butlers and a driver and a nanny, and it was just like everything that I want, any toy that I wanted or anything I wanted, it was given to me. So I didn't know what hardship was. But then again, I wasn't arrogant enough to be like, I don't want to hang out with, as a little kid, I'm talking about, I don't want to hang out with you because you're not like us or you're not like me. No, I was always curious. Like I wanted to know, what is the other side like? What about people that don't have this? So I made friends with all types of different people. But I left home at an early age. Like I left Hawaii. That's my home. Pretty much that's where I grew up. And I had everything like a comfortable home, comfortable, you know, setting. Um, I left all that to venture out to Southern California, and I was 20 years old. When I first came here, I think I was 16 on a road trip with a friend who was older than me. So she was like, "Don't worry, I'll be like your caretaker." So um, we ventured out and went driving from here. We went to Canada. We went to like all over the place, and that was my little adventure. But then, like really coming out here alone, I think I was 20 years old when I left home for good to come out, and I ran into all kinds of weird stories. I mean, I can go on and on for months telling you about my stories, but yeah, I even was caught up in dangerous situations where I think any 20-year-old would have been like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die. But I overcame it. And yeah, so the book was about like a princess leaving her comfortable home, which is her castle. And then she ventures out and she meets all the wrong people. Like I'm talking about some friends that I met during my party days or during just my young days, you know. Some of them are still my friends to today. And I can't really say they're my maybe acquaintances, but it's been quite a journey. Yeah. And then when I hit rock bottom, it was like I really had to grasp onto something. There was nothing left.
mhm.
And that one thing that I grasped upon was God. And that's where I found mercy. And that's where I found my life again.
Oh,
Because I
well,
was
that's
this close to ending my life. Yeah. I was
oh,
close to ending my life.
your parents still alive?
My mom is, yeah.
Yeah. And are you still on good terms with her? And
Yeah, I talk to her every day. People trip out all the time because I talk to my mom for like hour to 2 hour a day. And they're like, you talk to her every day. What do you guys have so many things to talk about?
so what happened in that time when you were at the bottom? Were you afraid to go to her or and tell her what was going on? Or
I couldn't, I tried talking to her, but I felt like everything I was hearing from her is not what I wanted to hear at the time.
yeah,
Because every time I would complain or I would talk about my hardship, her thing was take it as a blessing, be grateful that it's not worse. Or it was always like, and of course, if I look back at now, you know, at what she was telling me, she was completely being honest and she was completely giving me the best advice she could. But at the time, like when I was going through depression and then when I was going through like almost ending my life, I don't know, maybe because I was rebellious in my heart or spiritually I wasn't uh, completely, you know, at a good state. I don't know.
yeah,
I didn't want to hear that. That's not what I wanted to hear.
yeah.
you know? But then again, I asked myself, so then what is it that you wanted to hear? I don't know. It's just anything positive, anything good that was given to me from her, I wanted to refuse it. Like, then it came down to a point where I don't want to talk to you, mom, because I'm not hearing what I wanted to hear. But then that's funny, right? Because I don't know what is it that I wanted to hear. Maybe I needed someone to just comfort me at that time. Maybe I just needed her to be like, I understand what you're going through. Maybe that's all I wanted. I don't know. But it's not like she wasn't being like that. She was, but she was also trying to tell me, you know, your life could be worse than it is. And you can always come home if you want to. Like, it's open for you. It's
How
your
come you didn't go
choice.
home?
I was married and I really didn't want to talk about this, but yeah, part of the witch in my children's book was my mother-in-law.
Oh. Well, you have your stories are full of archetypes.
Yeah, nobody, actually, you're the first person that knows about that now. Now this is going live. Interesting. Yeah, nobody knew who the witch was in my book.
Well, I
That
hope
was
you
my
won't get in
mother-in-law.
trouble now by saying that.
Maybe, but she's my ex-mother-in-law now, so yeah. But
And
I
we don't
wish
have a
her
big
well.
audience, so chances of her seeing it are. Although you never
Yeah.
know, there's 10 million people in the city of New York, right? And when I took out that Craigslist ad for the channel, I took out one in New York City and interviewed maybe 20 people or 25 people, and maybe 15 of them from New York or less than that, probably 10 of them joined up the channel. 2 of them, and they didn't realize it until I started listing it on the website, were ex-boyfriend and girlfriend and were actually hostile.
Oh
So
my
they were
gosh.
like, you cannot put, just whatever happens, you just can't put us on the same show. I'm like,
Wow.
10 million people. What are the odds of that? You know, it's
Wow.
just,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're both interested in the topic, maybe, but still. And
And
they
I'm
both
sure they
have,
had these topics when they were dating, right? Because, you know, you have an interesting topic that you both are attracted to. You guys would talk about it. And
maybe,
maybe
yeah.
that's what it wasn't then, but it's just so bizarre that it happened to be the same show.
And actually, one of them, the woman is, she's not really interested in unexplained phenomena or paranormal or anything like that.
Oh,
She,
she's
and
not?
no, when she talked to me about it, what she wanted to do was true crime. And I told her that
Oh,
was fine. I think that's close enough, but she never really has had time to put together. See, that one of the reasons I shied away from true crime on the show was because I love true crime, and it's the top podcast genre. But it involves a lot of research if you're going to, especially if you're going to bring something new to the subject. But I figured with unexplained phenomena, everybody can have an opinion. You don't need to research it. You know, everybody has stories from their childhood or myths and just a good ghost story they might have told when they were a kid. There's all kinds of reasons for people to be able to talk about it. But she wasn't interested in that stuff, so I don't know. It just was a random coincidence that they both ended up contacting me and getting on the on the channel.
wow.
But well, is there
True
anything else
crime
you would?
meaning like something that happened. I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead, go
There's
ahead.
a little bit of delay.
Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
Is true crime like what happens to people physically, not like spiritually, right?
Yeah, and there's nothing supernatural, or there maybe the crime might be unsolved. And if you're going to do something for our podcast, an unsolved crime, I think would fit right in. So, for instance, if you've heard of Lizzie Borden, the Lizzie Borden murders, which were over 100 years ago, um, it's technically unsolved. Lizzie Borden was almost certainly the killer, but she was acquitted, and there is some strange conflicting evidence. So it's hard to know how she pulled it off. So there's nothing supernatural, but it is unsolved. So I think that would still fit in. But yeah, for the most part, our show would want to be on things that maybe stretch the boundaries of science or reality a little bit, just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun. Yeah, it's very interesting for me with crime, topics too, because I don't know who Lizzie was, but like who are those big guys like Bundy?
Yeah.
Um, what was his name?
Ted
Something
Bundy.
Bundy.
Ted
Ted
Bundy.
Bundy,
Yeah.
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 Like when I was watching the documentary about him, it, he says in his interviews, um, like something about Jesus Christ. And to me, like, you know, I don't know, people just always categorize it like mental illness, because that's all they can say. But once you start, you know, experiencing the spiritual realm, like, you know, the experiences that I've had and stuff, you can relate the mental illness to the other side, the spiritual realm as well. It's like the evil spirits almost steering you to do these things, you
Yeah, I
know.
don't know. He was. It is an interesting case because he was from a conservative family, I believe. A conservative. I'm not sure if it was Christian or Catholic. I mean,
I
I'm
think
not
it
sure if it
was a
was.
Christian
He
family. I
was
think
Christian.
it
I'm not sure if it
was.
was Catholic or another sect, but yeah, he was Christian. He was involved. He was a very successful student. He was involved early on with Republican politics. Um, was someone that would have been very successful in life.
Yeah.
He wasn't mentally ill, but he had these obsessions, and no one really knows how they came about or where. I mean, so he was clearly a monster. He had no reason for these obsessions, but he had these obsessions with wanting to kill people. And it's not like he was. Sometimes you'll see a story on one of these where you look at the bad guy, the killer, and you can say, all right, this guy, he probably couldn't ever get a girlfriend. And so maybe that one thing led to another, and next thing you know, this is, you know, he's killing hookers or something like that.
Yeah.
But Ted Bundy was not only a very good looking guy, he was extroverted. He was very smooth talking. He could get women anytime he wanted, and he had women. He had plenty of them. So it was something else, you know. And he only killed
Like he
women.
even said some, yeah, and he even said something about the voices, and just like other interviews I've heard by psychopathic killers, they all have something in common, and that's they all share that common stories of hearing voices telling them to go and kill, telling them to do this and that. People that are not religious can well look past that and say that's mental illness, or that's, you know, some imbalanced chemical in their hormones. They can say whatever they want, but I believe it falls in the category of spiritual realm, the good and the evil. Like, I do believe it's bad spirits telling you to do something.
So the thing on that, let's assume that that's true. And the part that in this actually, I don't want to go down too much down religion, but for me, like, why would God allow spirits like that to take someone and take them off the path and turn them into a killer?
You know, that's an excellent question. Oh my gosh, can I just stop you for 1 second? That's a brilliant question. That's that one question that I'm gonna be asking my co-host on the next podcast that we're coming up with. We're gonna probably open this podcast up during Christmas season, ending of this year, 2021. We're gonna call it Questions for Christ, or Questions for Christians.
Okay.
And it's gonna be everything related to that type of, you know, question. So stay tuned. Yeah, I can't answer that now because it'll ruin everything for the show. But yes, there's a good explanation to that.
Let me run one more thing by you, and you can react to it or not. It's up to you. But so when I was younger, I was in Catholic school, and I can remember the nun. We had a nun, Sister Cecilia, who was kind of cool. She was tomboyish. She'd be out there playing football with us at recess, and she had it in for me sometimes. She beat me up at recess a couple of times. She'd whack me in the face because she'd leave me in for detention or some assignment or something like that, and I'd sneak back out, and she'd find me out back in the middle of the game, and she'd come over and she'd whack me, and then I would just kind of laugh, and she'd whack me again, then I wasn't laughing anymore. But she was good though. I mean, but she sometimes, so she was explaining evil, and I remember she said that it was so she's described God this way: God is sitting on a mountain, and it's like you being on a mountain, and you're looking down, and you can see a road going around the mountain, and there's a car coming on one side and a car coming in the other way, and from your spot you can see that they're going to hit and they're going to crash and maybe fall off the mountain or whatever. But you're helpless to stop it because you're up on the mountain. And so I remember starting, this was in the 8th grade, I think. And so I remember started asking, that's when at that point I did believe. And I just started asking questions, and the questions never stopped with me. And I went from a point from, by the time I was a sophomore year in high school, didn't believe. But then now I kind of maybe believe a little bit differently, but not exactly the way the Catholic theists would like it. So for me, if God is, I don't think that God could be these two things at the same time. I don't think God could be all powerful, which includes all knowing, and all loving, or loving. Like if you were all powerful, I don't think you would allow all of these things to happen. So, like for instance, say, the Holocaust. Now, for me though, people have typically said, well, figure early 18th century European thinkers would say, well, God was like a watchmaker then. He just he's all powerful, he sets the universe in motion, but then he's kind of dispassionate. He doesn't really care what goes on. Everything just kind of goes the way it goes. Well, I would wonder if it's more the opposite, where God is all loving, or he does love us, but he's not all powerful. He is powerful, and he is, in the sense, created the universe. But I find some appeal in that, because it seems to me that if you look at that, then it sets the play for good versus evil, and good spirits versus bad spirits. And there's kind of a battle going on, and God wants you on their side because he needs you on their side, and he needs as many good people as he can get on their side. So I guess I've looked at it too, like as God, I've read the Old Testament, and there's some really strange stuff in it, and it makes me wonder if, imagine God as a being that is at the beginning of time, at the beginning of the universe, is basically unconscious. And it's over the course of creation, learning to know itself and becoming more and more awake as the time goes on over the eons. So he waking up, and to me, I can picture a God like that, almost like Jesus, coming into the universe and experiencing that suffering firsthand, because you're just becoming aware of what your creation is and what your role in it, and of all these other people around you that are also suffering, and you feel for them, you love them, and you care for them, and you want to stop their suffering. And I don't know. So to me, it fits in more with Christianity, the idea that the creator God is not all powerful. It is a creature. I'm saying he, but it's not a he, but it's a creature. It's a being that is learning and becoming self-aware, and that we, in our place in the universe, he wants us with him to help him out, on his team, to help triumph against the other side. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. And I think these are all really good, concerns and questions. And that's exactly what that podcast is going to be about. Questions that some pastors can't even answer.
Yeah.
But you can only answer so much if you are a true Bible believer, because you can only answer through the word of God, what the Bible is saying. You can't make up your own thinking and try to answer that, Of course, there's so many questions that linger around us for the rest of our life, but we won't know till we get there, like when we die when we
Right.
actually see God. And I'm sure a lot of people would say, then how would you know your God exists? The same question like that demonic spirit asked me. Yeah, of course we have these thoughts sometimes. What if you get to the end of your life cycle and there is no God, or there is God? But I don't know, now it's amazing how that faith is so embedded in my heart. Like I know for sure God exists. Um, some questions, yeah, I might not be able to answer, but when you really read up on it and you really have the heart to want to know about God and want to know more about his identity and why he did the things he did, the only way I would say you could really get that clear answer is through prayer, fasting, and reading, constantly reading and hearing the word of God,
But I
you
think like
know.
what you just said is actually a perfect example of so your faith in God is not based on the words of the Bible. I'm obviously you accept the words of the Bible, but it's based on a feeling in your heart. And so it's possible for you to have that feeling and appreciate the words, but say not every one of those words is literally true.
Sure. Um,
Especially, the God of the New Testament is very different from the God of the Old Testament. So,
I guess more so like I became to understand God a little more as I became a mom, because when you're a mom and you have children, and you know that you know what's best for your children, and you tell them, like for instance, for example, it's something random, like let's say you tell your children, don't go down that alley because you know that something bad's going to happen. It's a dark alley. It's not nothing good comes out of that alley. It's dangerous. And then you tell them to go to this alley because it's a lot more safer, and it's a lot more safer because you've experienced it, it, but they don't listen to you and they go, and then something happens. Now, let's just say I am God and I'm their mother. I could have stopped them from going there because I do have the power to do so, like if I really wanted to. But then because I love them and they have free will, right? They can choose to listen to me or not. And of course, if I love them, I would have stopped them no matter what. But let's just say, I
yeah,
gave them free will so they get to choose. Now, is that like my fault that they went, that I allowed them to?
it seems to me that
I guess.
like I said, if God is all powerful, you could design a universe where you would still have choice like that, but there wouldn't be such blatantly unfair things like a 4-year-old girl,
Getting
raped and
raped
beheaded
or
by the
mhm.
Taliban. That was not a result of a choice that she made. She had no choice. She was born into
Mhm.
this world and brutalized. Um, I can't imagine an all-powerful God that loved that child just sitting there and
That
watching it.
allows things like
Yeah,
that.
I
I
just
see
can't
it.
really. So to me, you could either take the position that God can't step in or doesn't want to. Um, and so to me, it makes more sense that there's a limitation on what God can do. Kind of like a kid. Nowadays, we have video games, right? Pretty advanced, and we have pretty advanced civilization games. And in some cases, so you can picture a kid, really smart kid on his computer designing his own video game, with characters and people in it and stuff like that. But once he sets it up, he doesn't have absolute control over everything that goes on in it. He's just kind of created this game. It seems to me that possibly God, that's not exactly the way I would look at it. I mean, although it could be God is just some kid somewhere in another universe setting up a game. But it's not necessary. I don't think it's a given that just because something created this universe that it's all powerful or knows everything that's going on in it. Um, I don't know. Just an idea. I hope.
It's a really good question. I mean, those are exactly the type of questions I want to ask. I want to talk about on that new platform, that new podcast that's coming up. Questions for Christians. That's what it's going to be called. Yeah. Questions
Okay.
for
Well,
Christians
when you launch the
with the
show,
number 4.
you'll have to come back and on this show and talk about it. So we'll we'll introduce you to our hopefully massive audience of 50 by then.
50,000. Let's see.
50,000. We'll see. Well, we have some plans, some things we're going to try, and hopefully things will look up in a month, but you never know with the internet, right? So
Yeah.
is there anything else you wanted to talk about tonight or bring up?
That's it. That was very interesting.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, and you're welcome to come on anytime and talk about your harrowing tales from California. Sounds like all those interesting characters that you met. If you want to sit down and jot down to refresh your memory on what some of the most interesting or impactful ones were, you can come back on and talk about them if you'd like.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thanks to you. Everybody check out tiaslifestyles.com and her blog, which is it on Spotify or what's it on?
It's tiaspage.com.
I'm sorry, tiaspage.com. And
the podcast is called Lifestyles with Tia.
Lifestyles with Tia. And where do they find that?
Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Google Podcast, Anchor.fm is my main. I don't know why I really like that station. It's Anchor, ACHOR.fm/Tia's page.
And I will obviously link to this below. So good night, everybody. I'll say good night separately to you, Tia. I'm just going to hit the stop recording. All right. I should have. Oh, did I stop the recording? No, I didn't. Hold on a second. I have to hit.